So welcome to the Learn Tourism Digital Drop-In. My name is Sarah Benoit, and I'm the lead instructor and event coordinator with Learn Tourism. I'm so excited to have everybody here to talk about this topic. This is a topic that I really meditated on for the last few weeks in thinking about how I wanted to approach it and what we could talk about, because there's so many different angles of what we could discuss. And like I said, I really invite everyone today to hop in the chat, share your thoughts, give me feedback, and share the experiences or the knowledge that you've gained working in your community, because I feel like this is the value in our tourism and travel industry. It's so important that we talk to each other and we share with each other. I think that's really the pathway to innovation. So just a few housekeeping things before we begin. One, you will get a copy of the slide deck as well as a recording of this. I want to encourage you, once you receive those, to share them with anyone on your team, in your community, your colleagues, your friends, anyone that you think can benefit from the conversation. I just encourage you to do that. And just as a reminder, we do these free webinars every month on the first Wednesday from 12:10 to 1 p.m. Eastern. And we just encourage everyone to come every month, invite your friends and colleagues again, and consider this a real resource. And at the end of this slide deck, you always have all of my personal contact information. And so I am very open to people giving me feedback on the different topics that they would like to see, or even just the different issues, problems, challenges, questions that you have in your world that I might be able to help with. So please feel free to think of us as a resource and to put that first Wednesday of every month on your calendar so that you can join us. So to begin, I'm just going to give you a little introduction from our hosts and producers.
Welcome to the Academy at learntourism.org. Our mission is to advance the tourism industry by leveraging science, business psychology, and adult education to build sustainable economies and foster meaningful experiences. We partner with destinations, travel planners, and industry professionals to deliver cutting-edge training programs and resources. Our goal is to equip you with the knowledge and skills needed to thrive in the ever-evolving tourism landscape. Through our learning experience platform, we offer customized course development and access to inspiring experts. These tailored solutions are designed to enhance professional growth and make a significant impact in the global industry. Join us as we explore new ideas and share valuable insights to shape the future of tourism. Together, we can create a dynamic and engaging environment that fosters innovation and collaboration throughout the tourism sector. Thank you for being here, and we look forward to a dynamic session. Connect with us at learntourism.org to unlock your potential and contribute to the vibrant world of tourism. Let's make a difference together.
So as we go along, please feel free to drop your questions into the Q&A. I will also be monitoring the chat as well. And so I really encourage feedback today as we go along. I'm probably going to ask some questions, and I'd love to hear what your communities are doing. So on that note, we'll start with this first question. And that is, why is destination leadership important? I'm curious to hear from all of you why you see this as something that really matters. I know a lot of you are involved in the destination world as your job, so your work is there. I know there may be a handful of you that are business leaders that are involved in this. And so even if you are not a destination professional, I still think that destination leadership is important in the business world, in the nonprofit world, in the community building world. So I'm curious to hear from all of you in the chat. Why is destination leadership important to your communities? Why do you think that it is valuable? And John, great point. If you don't lead, who will? I think that's a really important point to make, because I think there's a lot of people in the world that have an idea that, someone else will pick up that, sort of role, or pick up that work, or create that motivation. Anybody else want to share why they feel like destination leadership is important to their community and their region? Absolutely, Omi. Steering future planning and outcomes for the community, right? Making sure everything's aligned. Excellent answer. The personality and the assets of the community need to be communicated effectively and strategically. Absolutely. Yeah, if you build it, they will come is not true. I mean, great point, Jill, right? We really need to have kind of strong intention. When I think about marketing and strategy, sometimes for some people, the word marketing doesn't have a positive connotation, but it's like really to me, marketing has a lot to do with intention, right? So that you can really differentiate yourself. Yeah, and we need some cheerleaders, especially right now in the world. I feel like that's one powerful role that we can all play in our destinations is, just bringing that positive energy and the collaborative energy and really holding that community space to say we all live here and it matters. And the people who are coming here to visit, we're all in this together. Absolutely, Emily. Having people in the community that have a higher level or that bigger picture aerial view is really helpful. That's so important. I love that point because I think a lot of times what happens in conversations around tourism is it's very personal, right? It's people's homes, it's their businesses, it's the people who are traveling, it's their vacation, it's the time with their family. All the things involved in what we do are actually very personal to people. And sometimes we need to take that sort of bigger picture perspective to really be effective, I think, and to balance those things, right? Yeah. And Bob, alignment on shared values. So awesome answers, y'all. I think this is an ongoing conversation, I think, in our whole industry around tourism and travel and destination marketing and leadership and stewardship and all of those things. I think, you're really touching on the key reasons why this conversation needs to be something that I think is open and transparent and welcoming to lots of different ideas and thoughts. So tourism, I know I'm preaching to the choir today. I don't necessarily need to convince you all of these things, but I did want to just highlight where we see the real literal impacts that matter to people, right? So when I talk about why tourism and travel is personal to people, what do we mean by that, right? So first of all, tourism is going to impact job creation, right? So the World Travel and Tourism Council has said that tourism accounts for 10% of global employment, which is a huge impact, right? When we look at all the different things encapsulated in our industry, all the various sectors and all the sort of indirect and direct connections, it's really, we have a powerful influence across the world, right? We're really giving people experiences as far as the people who work in the industry and the people who are actually participating in the industry as travelers. Tourism is also impacting workforce development. And I would say workforce development impacts tourism directly back. So it's a very reciprocal relationship, right? Essentially, I feel like this is becoming a bigger conversation for all of us. I think where I live in Western North Carolina, we're having some key discussions about this because of the impact of the hurricane in the fall and how it's affected our workforce. But we're really feeling it. And I feel like viscerally in our bodies, how important this relationship is. Some of the ways that this plays out is I think tourism and hospitality, they support entry-level positions and long-term career pathways for young people, populations that maybe don't have as much access to higher education. They really have a broad spectrum of how they can engage people in the workforce. And I think that's something very powerful that I've always felt in the tourism world. I started working in hospitality. I worked through in high school and college and all the way up till now. I have been in hospitality and tourism in almost every aspect of the industry. And so for me, it's like I see how it gave me this real opportunity to develop skills in a number of different ways and to think of my career very differently, right? And I think what I've seen across the country is that tourism is really directly connected into the higher education system in a lot of ways. So community colleges and universities are also figuring out how they can integrate with us, create internship, apprenticeship programs, and build out those talent pipelines, right? Especially in more rural areas, because I've worked so much in rural America, more than I have, let's say, in larger cities. One of the things I've really come across is that talent pipeline is very powerful. It can really give people the opportunity in more rural areas to stay where they live, right? When they develop a career in this way. So I think this reciprocal relationship is really powerful. Also, tourism impacts the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So again, this is something I've kind of lived, which is that up until the beginning of this year, I was an entrepreneur for over 20 years running my own businesses. And So I have literally built a career around working for myself. That entrepreneurial ecosystem sometimes includes a lot of things that we don't always think of as tourism, right? But visitors are driving revenue into all parts of local industries. So our arts, music and film, retail, food and beverage, outdoor recreation, the health and wellness industry, accommodations, transportation, all of these things are directly impacted by how well the tourism industry is performing and how well it is integrated into the community and doing those things that you guys just mentioned in the chat. Thinking about the future, communicating the personality and values of the region, really figuring out how to share what makes your community, your destination special in a lot of ways, right? So we really do see that, the entrepreneurial ecosystem is inextricably linked here. And sometimes I think there's, like I said, there's places where we say, oh, that's not tourism, that's not hospitality. But when we really look at it, again, there's these indirect connections. And Omi, I see your comment that Old Fort, North Carolina just opened a trail school, McDowell Tech, and you get to go speak to the workforce development class and high schoolers on like what tourism really is. So I am excited you get to do that this week because that is an exact example of what I'm talking about. And then I think one of the lesser known kind of conversations is that tourism impacts community health. And I mean health on all levels. I think that health is economic when it comes to local wages and small business growth and stability for our businesses, and also just resident quality of life is all really affected by what we're doing with tourism as tourism leaders and destination stewards. But I also think it goes deeper into the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of your community. There are things inside of tourism that can be both perceived as negative and positive impact, right? And so it's funny, I definitely have a little bit of a soapbox around, that business is not devoid of feelings. Business is actually rooted in feelings. And that sometimes we want to shy away from the emotional component of what we're doing, or we feel stressed out by it on occasion. But I feel like we really want to embrace it, right? That's why I always tell people emotional intelligence is such an important part of marketing, because it is really valuable to understand that in the tourism world, everything you're doing, like I said, has this sort of bigger picture impact. And it also has this very personal impact. And when things are that personal, we are going to realize that impact like goes into different levels of people, right? It's not just about money and it's not just about work and that sort of thing and success, but it's also about how you feel about your day-to-day life. Is what you enjoy being able to be put to the forefront, right? Do you feel good in your community on every level? So I think that's like a conversation we don't have as much, but it's so, so powerful to have that conversation. And it leads to transparent and honest and open-minded conversations within your community about the impacts and how people feel and how they perceive things. It starts to allow you to know that maybe you need a what is tourism class as part of, how you're engaging younger people and people that are coming up through, somewhere like a community college. It really helps you when you have those conversations to see, this is where we need to have more conversation. This is where we need to define things more. This is where we need to have strategic community engagement so that everybody understands the purpose behind what we're doing. So again, I'm curious to hear from you all in your communities. What challenges are on the rise? And, I ask this question, but I really ask it from a very productive and positive and empowering place, because I don't think challenges are negative. I think challenges are a way to learn. And I think they're a way to understand people better. And so I'm curious, when it comes to your community, especially around tourism and travel, is there anything that you see that is kind of challenging right now that's causing discussion or maybe even causing some arguments, or that people in your community have a strong feeling around it and you're having to sort of navigate those strong feelings because not everybody has the same opinions, right? One of the most powerful things for me in tourism and travel, just as a professional, but also as a student of humanity, is that I've really had to learn that my job is about representing many, many different types of people, right? And so I have to really work to be in a place where I'm not judging people, even if I disagree with them, that I'm still really thinking about the fact that we have to consider these challenges. We have to consider different opinions, even when they're not something that we personally agree with. So does anybody have specific challenges? One of the ones that I've been talking about this week is for the communities that have national parks and outdoor recreation. And this is a big part of what we do. We're navigating this new challenge of what happens when we have less employees, or what happens when we have less people on staff at those places. How are we going to navigate that? And what does that look like? So I know that's one that we're facing all across Western North Carolina is, how is that going to play out over the next few months? And what does that look like as we go into, the prime time parts of the year where it's warm? Yeah, and the political situation, its effect on travel from Canada and Europe. That's another great one, Jean, right? That's, again, sort of stepping back to that bigger picture again. It's not just about the US, but we have people that come from all over the world to be here. And so now we're thinking about, what do we do if that shifts and that flow is not at the same rate that it's been before? I do think in a lot of ways, these are conversations that we've been having since, 2020, because COVID deeply impacted our perspectives on these things, right? Anybody else have challenges that they're sort of facing right now just around the impacts of tourism? I mean, obviously, I think I'll just shout out in Asheville, our housing crisis is the biggest one. That's something we've really been working on, and it is a complex issue to deal with. And as the smallest, we're a small city, but we're sort of the biggest city in our region. And it's been very important for us to realize that the housing crisis that affects our city is actually not just ours. It has now started to spread across different counties and affect people in different ways. And so to me, that's something we have to keep talking about. But again, if you're facing any challenges or thinking about challenges right now, please feel free to share them in the chat, because I'd love to know what other communities are looking at. The reason I wanted us to think about the challenges is, again, not so that we can just feel the pressure the fact that we do represent lots of different people in our community, that we do have a lot of voices to listen to, that our country as a whole has a lot of different challenges that we're facing. So, the collective is definitely impacting the state level, the local level, right? Because our collective federal level is having a lot of changes right now. But I think the answer to that, and this is maybe because I'm a little biased as somebody who works in technology, but I think innovation is one of the perspectives that keeps me hopeful, that keeps me looking towards the future, that keeps me from getting stuck, right? Because innovation is how we really look at what we are doing at our established system, how it's working, and we introduce new ideas. We introduce new methods or perspectives or products, right, into our area. And for me, I feel like if we don't want to get sort of overwhelmed or burnt out or sort of absorb the stress of different things that are going on, putting on that innovator hat, thinking of ourselves that way is a really good way to approach things from a balanced perspective, right? We get outside of maybe what we've always done things, to look for new ways to collaborate, and to really know that the future isn't going to be something we can always predict, and that we have to be able to have that spirit of innovation so that we can be agile and adapt. And yeah, John, I see you're talking about how volcanoes aren't making your islands bigger faster than the sea level rise. So climate change is a big issue for you and your carbon intensive destination. So that's, again, one of those huge complex issues that I think can get really exhausting. But it's like, I know from being in the environmental world, there's actually lots of innovation happening. So when we put on that hat, it can help us. It can help lift us up and look at what's possible, right? And Omi, I see your comment as well that, McDowell County in North Carolina is on the northern border of the Blue Ridge Parkway. It's all under repairs. And so limiting staff for the people that are going to be doing that, it's really a big question of how do we handle that? That was something I brought up in a big meeting yesterday when they were asking people, how is this issue with the National Park Service and the firings and stuff like that, or the layoffs affecting you? And, I said, here in Western North Carolina, I think we're all scared because it's going to take us so long to rebuild our outdoor recreation from the damage that was done. And so having less people on that project on the federal level means we really have to come up with some ways to do it on the state and local level. And that's because we want to be able to bring people back to this beautiful region safely. We want them to have great trails. We want them to be able to see the waterfalls. We want them to be able to get those views on the parkway. Right now, we're looking at quite a few years before we actually get a lot of that work done. So it's hard to see resources being taken away from that right now, right? And again, I think that's another experience where it's hard in the sense that it feels stressful, it feels worrisome. But again, like I really invite everyone that, innovation is just about allowing yourself to come up with something new and not being afraid to let go of how things have always been and look at how we could be doing it maybe in a way we've never done it before. But again, all of this to say, yeah, and Paige, I just want to mention, I see your comment about the Federal Heritage Area. Yeah, we have a National Heritage Area here in the Blue Ridge. Yeah, and they were on the call yesterday as well. So again, I really relate to that preserving our history has also involved a lot of the federal government. So when we see changes at that level, we have to then figure out how are the state level, the local level, how are we going to navigate, be agile, shift our focus and come up with new ways that we can still preserve that history and we can still, again, invite people to participate in it. Over this last year, I have seen a great increase, and I'm not a data researcher, so I'm going to say it's pretty anecdotal in a lot of ways, but I have seen across like looking at different social media data for different rural communities across the country that there's been a big uptick in heritage and history and wanting to share that and wanting to connect with those stories, connect with the past and sort of the ancestral energy that's there. So it's going to be important for us to figure out how we continue to make those strides forward. But again, I love these answers because I think it really shows that at the end of the day, we're all in this together, learning and growing, right? So there's no necessarily simple answers to the challenges. There's no necessarily very short, direct routes to the answer, right? These are going to be sort of journeys that we go on as destinations. And, I think innovation in a lot of ways, when we embrace the new, when we embrace what's possible, when we allow ourselves to have a new vision, what we're able to really see is that it's not about our ego, our recognition. It's not about necessarily winning. It's not about necessarily being at the top. It's really about being on this journey of serving people better. And I think that's like the power of learning at the end of the day, is that when you put yourself into the process of learning, which I feel is directly parallel to the process of growth in nature, right? When we look at how our brains expand, our knowledge expands, our skills expand, that is almost the same sort of parallel process that we see when we watch a plant grow and the flowers bloom. I think looking at things from that perspective right now can be such a good way to infuse us with creativity and excitement and energy and to share that with other people. And that's not to say we're always going to be in that mode, but I think it is a perspective that allows me, again, not to burn out, not to feel overwhelmed by the complexity of what we're facing, right? So I want to talk about strategic actions that we can actually take, right? And again, I want you to feel free to hop in the chat as we're going along and share if you're doing something that I talk about. If you have an example of this working in your community, I'd love to hear about it. So these are just kind of these are bigger buckets. I think we could spend another 3 hours drilling down into what these actually mean, but I think they're pretty actionable and there's ways that we can start putting these things into practice. One is a unified local commitment to great customer experience. And I think most of all, we want to make sure that we're always defining customers in our destination as the visitors, the tourists that come there to be a part of our community for a short amount of time, and the actual people who live there, because the residents are also our customers. And again, I know you all know that, but I really feel like we have to actually start saying that more out loud. And it's important for our communities to see that reflected and hear that, right? So all of our local stakeholders, the businesses, the people who work for them, the government leaders, the people who work for the CVBs and the chambers and the DMOs, right? The destination professionals, anybody else in the community I think we really want to figure out, how do we define the brand? How do we commit to the brand of our region? How do we set goals for our brands, whether that's a city, town, or counties? How do we really define, commit to, and set goals for those things as a larger group with more input, and find where we can match up on how we want to make people feel? Right. And this is, again, it's tricky in conversations, because I think when you bring a lot of different community members together, it does take some time to get people to sort of work through their issues and come together on different levels. But I really believe in my heart it's possible, even though it takes time and it takes effort and it takes real strategy and it takes a commitment. I do think it's possible to bring more people together. And I even think it's more important because I've seen a lot over the years. We will bring government leaders and, destination professionals and businesses together. And then sometimes I want to know, where are the employees in this conversation, right? How do we engage them? How do we give them the opportunity? How do we find different groups in town that represent different employee segments in our area and get at least one representative to come in and share what they're working on, right? So I really think we want to just really think about stakeholders in a bigger picture. And when we get a unified commitment to how we want people to feel when they're in our area, we're able to create marketing campaigns and training programs and all sorts of promotions and different pitches for engagement that reinforce this commitment and make everyone feel like they can get behind it, right? So a good example of this, if you want to check it out, and again, when you get these slides, you can click on these links, is in Lexington, Kentucky. They have a program called Lexperts Certified. And I was just recently there to visit them and talk to them about it, went to their visitor center. And I just really, first, I loved the play on words, right? Lexpert, Lexington, Kentucky. Thought it was cute. I thought it worked. They have a really strong brand that they've gotten behind. And now they're really inviting everyone to get certified. Everyone that they feel kind of touches into this world to sort of get on board with this unified commitment, right? And I think that's just a really powerful thing. And I really enjoyed, they've put in just a short time, they've had over 300 people respond to it. And, we talked about how they can continue that and really continue to reach out to people and get people to commit to coming through the program, getting themselves up to speed, so they feel like they're a part of this whole team, right, that's working to move forward. And hey, Eric, I see your comment about how you're getting ready to launch kind of an academy and build brand ambassadors. Absolutely. That's exactly what the Lexpert Certified program is kind of based on. That's awesome. Yeah. And John, I see your resident sentiment study went as broad as you could go and engaged everyone, right? Everything from nonprofit organizations to the local utilities to students to all sorts of workers, even non-traditional workers, right? And I think this is really valuable to really see everyone as a part of your community. And I know, again, there's a lot of people that will argue about what the definition of that is, but it is important. In Asheville, we have spent a lot of time working to connect with our houseless community and the people who struggle and have lost their homes. How are we going to engage them? We were already doing that, but after the hurricane, it's even more important because we lost over 100,000 homes and businesses here. And so, our sort of perspective on people who don't have homes has really changed, right? People that don't have a house anymore, we sort of maybe had some judgments prior to now, but we can't have those same judgments because we really have had to evolve our thinking in how we need to engage everybody who doesn't have a safe place to live, right? And understand how we're impacting them. It makes a big difference because, again, there's a reciprocal relationship there, right? And then, Emily, I see your comment about career and training development, working in that world, that you've provided customer service training, destination training through the community colleges and other channels. And you got a lot of engagement and participation, which is awesome. I think there's always a challenge to get engagement, especially from a wide variety of sectors. For instance, business owners are going to have an easier time taking time off to participate in something than a employee or a worker is, right? But yeah, that's awesome. I really appreciate also that you've worked on having, it's important to think about having programs that are paid versus programs that are free to different parts of your community. How do you get sponsorship or buy-in from, the other people that have resources so you can lift up the people who don't? I think that's a great point because it's really, I think when we talk about unification, really important. So building digital technology skill and confidence. So this is just something that I've been thinking about as we went through 2024. And I think, again, maybe someday I'll be on a TED talk about this, but I just think at this point, everyone needs technology training. Everyone. If you're going to live in the modern world and participate in it. And I know I live in the mountains, so there's some people that will be on the mountain and say, I don't need this. And I respect that. But I think if you're interacting in the modern world, really giving people the opportunity to not just learn technology, but to actually feel confident in how they are engaging with it. And this goes for the people that are working in tourism. And this goes for the people that are experiencing the tourism, because technology is actually impacting us from both sides. So I see this since again, I'm in technology, I think of it as back end and front end, right? So the back end is all of us that work in this industry, all of us that have businesses that are impacted in this industry. We are definitely having to engage with the technology and feel more confident talking about it, feeling more confident implementing it, not getting sort of behind in some ways, so that our experience for people is really what they expect and what they want. But I also see the front end as the visitor themselves, the resident themselves that engages with us, that they are actually being presented with a ton of new technology as well. And in travel, we're seeing really specific things like AI personalization, virtual reality and augmented reality, right? So virtual reality is inviting people to come see us and showing them the experience. Augmented reality is an experience they have once they're here that enhances the experience, right? Smart tourism. So I know airlines, airports, train stations, all sorts of different types of transportation are looking at how do we streamline everything, make it more efficient, make it easier for people to know where to go, to get on the train, to buy their tickets. Biometric identification. I experienced this in Italy this past summer when I was able to arrive at Rome at 4 a.m. and walk through customs and basically have it scan my passport, then have it scan my face. And then it just was like, okay, you're Sarah Benoit. And then it let me through the gates, right? And I didn't even talk to a person because it was the middle of the night. So we're going to see those kind of things. The Internet of Things enabled services. I think the Internet of Things is really about how we sort of automate lots of different things around us. So a good example of that would be tracking luggage, right? Instead of having kind of a little code with a sticker, what if there's a way that you can just be updated in the app of the airline about where your luggage is, so you know that it's going to arrive with you, right? And sustainable travel monitoring, to John's point, for places that are really impacted by climate change and things like that. It's really important to think about how we track the carbon impact of things and how we know how our visitors are affecting the environment, right? And we're going to have a lot more, I think, going forward because of AI, ways to look at that. And I think tutorials, training, testing your systems, all of this is going to matter. So great UX is essential, right? And so the DIY Tourism Marketing Conference, which we produce here, is just an example. I mean, we built that 8 years ago because my friend Chris Kavanaugh of Magellan Strategy Group really said to me, hey, we need a conference just about digital technology skill, getting people more comfortable with this stuff, especially when they're a decision maker, because sometimes even decision makers, they're not touching every piece of the technology, but they still need to be able to make budget decisions. They still need to be able to make decisions about how to move forward into the future and provide better customer experience. And so how can we make sure people at all levels feel really comfortable and confident with where we're at? And, there's lots of different programs out there that you can see. But I think in tourism, we're going to see we need more and more specifically for us to dig into what's happening in the travel industry and how it is affecting everyone. Yeah. And thanks, Emily. I really appreciate that. Not to just shout myself out, but it was something that really drove us 8 years ago to make that decision. And I think it's even more important now because the industry is, I was saying yesterday, I feel like I often have whiplash, from how fast things change and how I have to keep up with it. It's like, I thought it would get easier as I got older, but it has gotten much harder. So yeah, the third one is fostering actionable local business collaboration. So local businesses and nonprofits, I include them because a lot of nonprofits do still benefit, maybe less directly, but they do still benefit from having people come here, come to your destination, do different things. I feel like they have to work together to create a cohesive experience, right? So as people engage with your local community partners and they go to local restaurants, they go to retail shops, they go to museums, they go to zip lines. How can we bring those folks together again? So we have that bigger perspective of unifying the whole community. But then I think there's like an inside circle of that that's about local business and nonprofits, the people that are really marketing alongside of you, your region, your city, your town, right? How can we make sure they're also cohesive, that they have partnerships that are leading to win-win outcomes for everyone? I think a lot of this can be about bringing industry groups together. So looking at the different industries, the different sectors, are there associations? Are there different groups that meet, downtown associations, and, things like the PR association, that sort of stuff, the local chamber? How can we really look at all the groups that are available, maximize that, and make sure they're also communicating with each other? How can we facilitate conversations between the local business world and the nonprofit world and the government? Because we're sort of sitting right in between those places. And oftentimes we're the bridge between those things, right? And then one thing I don't think a lot of places think about enough and talk about enough in their local business ecosystem is how do we make co-op marketing and advertising? How do we take that to the next level? How do we take smaller organizations and businesses that maybe don't have huge budgets and help them work together? This is something I learned from Justin Bellamy, who was my business partner for 14 years and also helped me start the DIY conference, that he had so many innovative ideas about how, especially in the social media world, the email marketing world, that you could really take co-op marketing and advertising to another level and make it more valuable and produce much higher levels of results. And so I think that's a conversation that has been going on a long time, but sometimes we don't have any space to sit down and think about how we could do it differently. I want to encourage you. There's so many things you could do. So one of the things I think Justin did that was so unique was really figure out how different groups like businesses or associations or nonprofit organizations could work together and share a small ad budget and promote to each other's networks, right? So instead of me just buying the ads, I would take that money and give it to a partner, and the partner would buy the ads and promote my organization or my business to their people, right? And it's sort of that age-old idea. It's great when you say that what you're doing is awesome. That's great marketing. But when other people say what you're doing is awesome, that's exceptional marketing, right? And it's going to have a bigger impact. So some good examples, again, here in Asheville, we have the Asheville Independent Restaurants Association, and they do all kinds of advocacy, meetups, just all sorts of events to help you plug into their little part of the industry. They collaborate with lots of folks, and I think it makes a big difference to our independent restaurant kind of ecosystem here. That's very important to our downtown. And also another one for us was the River Arts District Artists. And again, this is a part of our city that was almost 100%, or I would say maybe like 95, but the majority of that area was wiped out. Our artists lost their studios. They lost the greenway by our river. They lost all of the things that kind of made that part of the city special. And they're having to really think about rebuilding and what that looks like. But again, they've done an amazing job of coming together. Again, simple example, a lot of the artists whose studios were not affected, which there was one main strip that was really safe from what happened, they have opened their spaces to bring in the other artists that lost their studios. We've had even people in the restaurant industry bring in artists to show their work, to continue to sell. So again, having that actionable collaboration is really important. And in a crisis, it's even more valuable that you have it not just collaborative, you're not just saying you want a partner, but really having a plan in place, an actionable way to deal with something. We're really building that out here at home. And we had some of those things in place, but we learned a lot in the fall about what we didn't have in place. And we're really looking at how we build those things. And these types of organizations are key to that. Yeah, and Omi, Bob from Whitewater Films is working with Blue Ridge National Heritage Area to promote the River Arts District. Absolutely. And artists in your region as well. Bob's from Mountain Water Films, just to clarify that, because I know Bob. Yeah, he is doing a great job of helping figure out how we bring people together and collaborate. That's something I feel like Bob and I immediately sort of connected on when we first met, that we have that value that's shared. And then continuing education and retraining initiatives, I think, are going to really become more valuable. Again, we already do this. This is something I know most of us have a relationship with our local community colleges or our universities. the tourism and hospitality programs. How can we make sure that, we're building up new talent and we're creating those pipelines and things like that. But I also think it's really important for there to be sort of retraining initiatives, right? That continuing education piece. So how do we take people that are already working in the industry and give them the support they need so that they're on the cutting edge of travel, so they're prepared for what's going to be happening 6 months from now or a year from now? How do we give them the opportunity to move up in their career and to see that this is somewhere they want to stay because there's room for growth, because there's a way to have more success and make a bigger impact, right? I think it's going to be more valuable as we go forward for all sorts of different parts of the tourism industry to figure out how we fund continuing education for people. I've definitely seen this in the hotel world, right? And I think more hotels should embrace this idea of how do you incentivize people that work for you to go and expand their skills and build a pipeline of talent that comes up through your ranks, right? And do it more strategically and more, intentionally. How do you sort of ask that question? What does the community need for them to be successful? This is really going to lead most employers to a place where they're able to retain people. I think sometimes there's a little bit of fear that if you keep educating and retraining people, you might lose them to someone else. But I really think in most cases, what you find is that investment you put into that type of retraining and continuing education actually builds a deeper relationship with your employees. And so, yes, there's always a chance you'll lose people to a better opportunity, but I don't think that should stop us from making this a bigger part of how we actually build out the whole industry overall, and that we think of giving people the chance to take themselves to the next level as like a real investment in just our own business and our success, but also an investment in the community and something that benefits all of us from an economic standpoint, and then will benefit every visitor that comes through the door. So again, another great example is Explore Seattle Southside's Business Development Scholarship Program. And they help hotel and venue sales professionals attend different educational conferences, have the chance to get in front of, different types of people that are planning conventions, planning meetings, build those relationships. And so again, this is sort of a DMO CVB investing in the hotels themselves and the people who work there and having that type of partnership, which I think is really strong. And again, if you're doing anything like that, let me know, because I'd love to check out what you're working on. And then finally, this is something I think that has made me really excited that I was invited to do work with Learn Tourism at the beginning of the year, because of their real commitment to the idea that empathy is an essential part of leadership. And I have been studying emotional intelligence for a long time. I've put myself through a lot of programs over the years because I'm a very emotional person. And I know that it's easy for me to take things personally and get caught up. And so over the last 20 years, developing my own emotional intelligence meant that I would be better at serving people. I would be better at communicating messages. I would be better at actively listening to people with different opinions. And I just think, to wrap up kind of the actions you can take, this should be integrated into all of those actions, right? Because to me, tourism involves and impacts everyone. We are really the bridge builders in this scenario between a lot of different parts of our communities. And I really believe different perspectives can make communities stronger, even when they're uncomfortable. And I'm not trying to be Pollyanna, right, about this. I'm not trying to be all roses and glitter, although I love roses and glitter. But I think it's really about, we have to make a choice about how we're going to approach these things. And, for me to do great work, and again, to not burn out, to not feel overwhelmed, to not feel like I'm giving up, it's really important for me to see myself in this role as an advocate in many ways. And as an advocate, I want to listen to people and I want to have empathy for them before I go another direction. And, there's always going to be places where we need to fight for our communities, and we need to stand up for people that need representation. And we need to push a little against the grain to say, hey, you're not considering this other perspective. I do think that it's really valuable for us to actually have those boundaries and to be able to take a stand when we need to. But we're going to have energy to take those stands when we have built a solid relationship with folks across many, many different sectors. And those relationships come from actively listening, doing everything we can to avoid misunderstandings and making people feel heard, and being okay that sometimes the change will happen in increments and change is still really valuable. And I wanted to say, I'm not taking away from the urgency of a lot of these complex problems. I'm not taking away from the fact that there are many things where action now is key. I just think that in order to have a balanced perspective and to make those things come to life and actually happen, I think we're really going through a time period in our country where we're realizing, do we want to kind of push against each other to make that stuff happen? Or do we want to figure out a way where some of us can create these spaces? And I do think in tourism and travel, this is our opportunity to create these spaces. There may be other people on different sides of things. They're going to play different roles, and those roles might be appropriate for them, right? But I think in our industry, there's real value in leading with empathy, actively listening, and seeing ourselves from this perspective. So I know we've got to go because it's right at the top of the hour. As usual, you do amazing things. More people should know. I really appreciate everyone being here as usual to join me. Feel free to drop any final thoughts you have in the chat about these issues. I know a lot of you might have already heard about the DIY Tourism Marketing Conference. We're pretty much ready to go, March 17th and 18th, and I'm excited. If you have been still considering it, we do have virtual tickets available, and you can just join us and attend online, which is great. But consider me a resource. You will have all my personal information after this webinar on Friday, along with the recording. If you have thoughts about this, if you want to share your experiences, you want to send me programs that you're working on so sometime I can talk about them in a webinar, please feel free. Connect with me on social media. But as usual, thank you all so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have a great rest of your week and happy spring because we're almost there. So have a great rest of your day. And thanks so much for all the kind words. And Paige, I'm so glad. Working on this topic was inspiring for me as well, because I know I need that energy and I need that motivation and that sort of like positive vibe. So thanks so much. And yeah, I hope to see you next month at our next digital drop-in, again, the first Wednesday of every month from 12:10 to 1 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day.